Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me? If someone can hear me, please let me know. Hello, are we all muted or can you hear me?
Starting the meeting yet.
Yeah, but they're all in.
Slide over, please. Give a minute or two.
Text her. Can anyone hear me?
I hereby call to order the April 6, 2023 Town of Frisco Planning Commission meeting. Cheryl, will you please call roll?
Commissioner Rankin.
Here.
Commissioner Latzmis.
Here.
Commissioner Stabile.
Here.
Commissioner Kane.
Here.
Rowe.
Here.
Commissioner Forsyth.
Here.
Commissioner Gleason is absent. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl distributed the March 16, 2023 and March 21st, 2023 meeting minutes. Any comments, corrections, or motion to move?
I'll move to approve the minutes as written.
Second. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Because you weren't here, yeah. And just a couple housekeeping items. As you see, we all have this fabulous dinner, so we appreciate timeliness in your response on attendance. If you can't make it, we understand, but Cheryl goes through great efforts to accommodate us, so RSVPing is important. And as always, it is very hard for people online to hear, so lean forward into your microphones, speak clearly and loudly. At this time, I will open the floor to public comment. If there's anybody here in the public that wishes to speak on items that are not on tonight's agenda, now is your time. Please step to the podium or raise your hand online, state your name, address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes, please. Anybody online? Nope. All right, I will close the public comment portion and we will move to agenda items. First item is planning file number MAJ-23-0003, a sketch plan review of the major site plan application for a proposed multifamily residential development consisting of 4 units located at 610 Frisco Street, lot 1 through 6, block 33, Frisco Town Sub. Applicant Mark Harris representing FDP LLC. And I will turn it over to Emily for the staff report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I will share my screen. There we go. All right, so tonight we have a sketch plan application for 610 Frisco Street. As you all know, the Planning Commission does not make any formal approvals at this time, but will be providing feedback on the materials that have been provided. So with that, I will start with a little bit of a background and description. The applicant is proposing to develop a new multifamily development that consists of 2 duplex buildings for a total of 4 units. The subject property is located on the southwest corner of Frisco Street and 7th Avenue and is zoned residential low density. The site does contain a significant area of steep slopes that are between 15 and 30%. The neighborhood consists of a mixture of residential building types, building designs, and densities. The site previously had a 1-story apartment building, a house, and a detached garage. All buildings have been demolished and the site is now clear. Here is a project rendering, just an overall view. And then moving on, we have our residential low density district dimensional standards. So the sketch plan is meeting this setback, lot coverage, height, and density requirements. The applicant is proposing that the east property line be the front yard. Lot coverage is at 45.4%, where 50% is permitted. The proposed height is 30 feet, which is the maximum height permitted. And lastly, the site is 0.48 acres in size, allowing up to 4 units on the site. One thing to note that was not called out in the staff report is that in the low density district, it requires that all buildings and structures that are greater than 20 feet in height must be separated by a minimum of 12 feet. The application is not meeting the standard between units 2 and 3. I tried to zoom in, it's a little blurry still, but that is where it is not meeting. But it is very close. Moving on to the development standards, we have our steep slope standards. The UDC requires that on slopes from 15% to less than 30%, net site disturbance shall not exceed 50% of the total area within that range of slopes. So for this site, there is 7,937 square feet of area where the slope is between 15 and 30%. You can see that shaded in the greenish area on the site plan. The applicant is proposing to disturb 3,967 square feet or 49.9% of area. The applicant is showing a 5-foot buffer around the building footprint that disturbs the steep slope area. And staff has mentioned this to the applicant and has concerns that they will not be able to stay within the site disturbance boundaries as shown. More details will be needed in order to show how the applicant plans to stay within the site disturbance boundaries and will be required at the time of final review. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission comment on the steep slope disturbance that is shown here. Moving on to grading, access, and parking. The application will have to be reviewed by the town engineer at the time for full submittal. However, the applicant will be required to show grading and construction management in greater detail at that time. Access into the site is proposed in 4 locations. There is 1 driveway proposed out to Frisco Street, 2 to 7th Avenue, and 1 on the South Alley. The driveway width is measured at the town right-of-way, and all 4 driveways are meeting the width and separation requirements. At the time of final submittal, Public Works will evaluate the use of the alley, access, and grading within the right-of-way. As far as parking, the proposed parking or the proposed site plan requires 16 spaces, none of which are required to be visitor parking. The applicant is showing 16 spaces, however, they are showing tandem parking. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission comment on the proposed tandem parking. For landscaping, on a lot this size, 24 trees and 14 shrubs are required. The proposal shows 24 aspen and 12 Colorado spruce trees and 19 shrubs being planted. The applicant is exceeding the landscaping quantities. However, they are not meeting the species diversity requirements. For a site where 24 trees are required, a maximum number of 1 species is 8. And then as far as snow storage, the applicant is showing 640 square feet of snow storage where 475 square feet is required. So they are meeting the requirements for snow storage. Here is a rendering of one of the elevations and then as well as the exterior building materials. They do vary slightly between the 2 buildings. However, they primarily consist of natural wood siding as well as black siding, stone veneer, and metal trim. The UDC states that pure black may not be used as the primary building color. And with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission comment on the proposed materials and color. Here we just have more elevation. So we have the north elevation of units 1 and 2, which is from Frisco Street, south elevation of units 3 and 4. So if you're looking from the alley. And then here we have the east elevation. So from 7th Avenue, and then the west elevation, which would be the rear lot line. And then these 2 elevations show the building facades that face each other. So as mentioned in the staff report, staff does not feel that the north elevation of units 3 and 4 is meeting 4 of the building element standards or building element criteria for the facade standards. However, all other facades are meeting those requirements in staff's opinion. So staff recommends that the planning commission discuss the proposed building elements. And then as far as roof standards, the applicant is proposing a combination of pitches, including 312, 412, and 512, where 612 is encouraged in the code. Here, the applicant is not proposing any bulk plane encroachments. And here's just their 3D rendering of how they meet that. And that is all I have for an overview. I'm here to answer any questions. However, staff recommends that the planning commission does provide feedback to the applicant. They are here in the audience tonight, and I have a list of all of the elements that could require feedback.
Thank you, Emily. Robert, do you have any questions for staff?
I have a couple. In the staff report, in the area where you're talking about how this meets the community plan,
Yes.
you hint, although I'm not sure you totally say it, but you hint that this is an acceptable development in this location because it's more for locals.
I guess I wouldn't necessarily
Well,
point that out, but there are a variety of densities. This is low density, so it requires fewer units than some of the other zone districts.
Well, I think the language that you pick up and I mean, we're still with 4-bedroom units, we're still primarily picking up rental units. And so I think you're being a little aggressive in how you're picking up how it meets the community plan, because I don't think the community plan anticipates every unit that we build in town being a rental unit.
Right.
Or a tourist unit, you know, either short-term rental or long-term rental or whatever. But that we're trying to build stuff for local residents, and I don't think we're doing that in this particular project. So I'd love you to look at that again for the next time that you write this. To, I guess, be more explicit about how this meets the community plan. That's probably a comment, not a question, but and the second thing was in the attachment that we got, I had a note that there was a bulk plane encroachment at on number 2 building.
So the way
And-
that the rendering shows, because of the grading of this site, if you're looking at it on a 2-dimensional plane, it does not appear that it meets the bulk plane encroachment requirements. And that was something that we brought up to the applicant, and they provided that 3D rendering.
I thought it was on the 3D rendering. Let me see if I can pull it.
It could be, I could have missed it.
It's on, let's see, it's on building, it's on number 2. Unit 2. Yeah, unit 2 on right here.
Right, so that is part of how it doesn't show up. The grade does change, which changes the envelope. So when you're looking at it 2-dimensionally, it won't appear to meet it.
Okay.
And
I'll take your word for it
We
at
can
this
ask
point.
the applicant for more details on that as well.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Robert. Ira, questions for staff?
Yeah, I kind of do have one here. Maybe I just don't know what I'm looking at. On A1.1. That has shows some grading. I mean, it shows that the green area, the steep slope. So there is there's this bold line that goes around and then it kind of goes, then it became red.
So right here.
Yeah, and then it becomes red. Keep going. Yeah, all that. What is all that?
Right, so this is showing the area of steep slope, so that does not count as that steep slope area.
Okay, and it's where the line is black. Is that showing a retaining wall or is that just the line?
Right, so that is, so right here is the building footprint.
Right,
And then this is the disturbance footprint that they are showing. So this is where we had comments that there is only a 5-foot buffer between the footprint of the building and where they're showing disturbance. And we have talked to the applicant and stated that we would need more details on how they plan to if they plan to have a retaining wall, what that looks like, and et cetera. More.
so with this being sketch plan,
Mhm.
if a retaining wall were to be built, should that be shown at this time?
We can ask the applicant what they plan.
Okay.
to do.
Additional questions or? you're
I'm
good?
good for now.
Lena, any questions for staff?
So are these true duplexes? You called them duplexes and townhomes in the staff report. And I guess I'm just curious.
I guess I may have used that interchangeably, but they're two duplex buildings.
2-unit building.
Yeah,
two-unit
2-unit
buildings.
buildings.
Okay, and I'll ask them how they're planning to subdivide. Still can't figure out this steep slopes thing. So in this image that we're looking at right now, the green hatching, that's where the steep slopes are.
Correct.
So it just stops in the middle section right there.
So it's that the steep slope is from 15% to 30%. I guess I don't know exactly what percent that grade is, but it is, I'm assuming it is not 15, so it could be 14.5%. So it's just outside of that.
And do we have a graphic that shows where the 30% slopes are versus the?
They are not calling out 30% greater than 30% slopes on this site.
Does that mean they don't exist?
Right.
Okay.
There are requirements specifically for slopes greater than 30%.
15 to 30. Okay. And why do you think, like the comment about that the 5 feet might not be
Mhm.
wide enough? What are you basing that on? Or what?
I'm just thinking that we need a little bit more information on how they plan to keep that area from being dug out further at the time of development. There are some window wells. They're not shown on this rendering, but you can see it on this site plan. There's some window wells right here,
Mhm.
and that goes out 4 feet. So that leaves a 1-foot
Oh,
buffer from that site disturbance area. So that was kind of part of the comments that I provided to the applicant.
I've never quite seen construction maintained within 5 feet, but
okay. And so I looked at the floor plans. Are there any 5 bedrooms?
There are, but the max number of parking spaces required is 4, so up to 4 parking spaces.
Right. But how many 5-bedroom units are there here?
I think there are 3, but the applicant may be able to answer that. I don't remember off
The
the top
one
of
that's
my
like a
head.
little bit smaller?
Yeah.
Okay. And I was gonna ask the same question about the bulk plane, because I get what you're saying, it's going uphill.
Going
so-
up, so the envelope
Yeah.
shifts with the grade.
Grade. I get that, but I think maybe we need that rendered a little bit more
Yeah,
clearly.
and that could be a comment for the applicant.
Okay, those are all my questions.
Jessica, any questions for staff?
I don't think I have any questions. Thank you.
Andy, questions for staff?
I'm just curious, Emily,
Would you lean in as well?
what do we think what are we trying to do with this 30 or the grades between 15 and 30%? What is it we're trying to protect? What are we worried? Because the site looks like a bomb went off right now. So we're putting a lot of effort into protecting what?
I guess, the integrity of the grade. I guess I can't tell you if they changed anything. They did get a demo permit, so that was approved to clear the site. But the UDC states that no more than 50% of that area can be disturbed.
Okay.
and keeping the natural element of the site.
If they do disturb more of that during construction, what does the codes say?
I guess, yeah.
Can you speak up?
We would have to cite them with a violation.
What does that mean?
Means they would get cited into municipal court
Pay fines.
and pay fines.
What is the tool, if I could piggyback on your question, that you are monitoring this? Like, how are you enforcing that they're doing this?
So the reason that Emily's gone to great lengths to point this out is because it happens. It happens a lot on sites with steep slopes. Everybody wants to maximize the buildable area. We have this requirement that says you can't disturb more than 50% of it. So they show, you know, a 3-foot construction disturbance envelope, and then it's not practical. The builder comes on site, different things happen, and we ask them to mitigate, right? Put it back the way they found it, put down erosion control measures. They might have to put in a retaining wall, but ultimately the damage is done. So it's hard to fix after the fact. And so that's why we're trying to be upfront about the issue so that we can propose feasible solutions.
Does somebody go out and measure this? Like during development?
They submit their construction management plan, they would have to show a fence on the edge of the disturbance line that they proposed. But then it's on us to continue to check and make sure that that fence doesn't get moved or torn down. And when there's 10 feet of snow on a site, it's challenging.
And further down the line, we do have, we look at foundation ILCs, so when the, foundation gets poured, we verify that they're within their site plan limitations and.
Andy, you have a question?
No, I think that answers my question for right now.
Lena, when do we see construction management plans? Will it be with the final site? No, can we ask for it?
You can ask for that.
Okay.
I have no additional questions at this time. Any other from anybody? All right, we will move to the applicant. Mark, if you want to step to the podium and state your name for the record, then give us your presentation.
I don't know if I need this now, but I thought it would be nice to bring the materials, so they're here if you guys want to.
Would you mind passing it around so we can just. Thank you for bringing that, by the way. We appreciate material boards.
So my name is Mark Harris. I am the owner of SARC, who has been hired to design this property. As you know, it was a apartment complex on the property with an additional house or two, I believe. And my client wants to develop it not only for his own use, he wants to occupy 1 or 2 of the units, and then he wants to sell the other 2, I believe. So conceptually, obviously, it's a larger site than a lot of them. He has a desire to have larger units. He wanted 4 to 5 bedroom units because he has a large family. So we have done that. We are really trying to work within the historic nature of Frisco and give it an element of modern touches, but also maintain the historic quality of it. And that's indicative of the materials, I believe. I'll talk about the materials real quick. In the old mining stuff, you see a ton of weathered wood, everything from black to gray to brown to whatever. So we feel that it was essential to use materials that were indicative of that. There's stone, which is a natural material. Everything there is natural. We didn't want to bring in a lot of unnatural, unused materials into the scope of the work. And we feel that because of the black is the Shoshiban wood, which is charred wood, it historically maintains its character. It weathers additionally over time, but it doesn't fade per se because it's burned, it's charred. There's not going to be a lot of fading and maintenance needed, so it has longevity, just like a weathered product of any sort. And so we feel that that's a really nice product and gives it a nice little modern touch to it. As far as the site, historically, I don't believe that the site had a 30% grade. I think it was carved out at one point in time to develop what was built on it. I think it's indicative of how that structure was built that was originally there. But being that said, we do have the 30% grade that's or 15 to 30% that we're really trying to work around. And we're sensitive to that. And we feel that the 5-foot buffer, obviously, most of the project doesn't have basements. There's only one unit 1 that does have a basement. All the other ones are shallower digs, so they're only 4 foot deep to get your foundation in. The other one is a little bit deeper just because of the hillside that's there that requires it. So we feel that 5 feet is indicative of it, and the window wells per code have to be only 3 feet wide for egress. So they're not 4 feet wide, they're 3 feet wide. And so that leaves a 2-foot buffer from the window well, and the window well is the last piece that goes in. You don't, once you disturb it, you start backfilling it, and then you add the window well as you go. Either a prefabbed window well, or you then form a new concrete and pour it and then backfill. So our idea is with the 5-foot buffer to go ahead and put in a semi-permanent fence along that line, so it will maintain its integrity through the construction, and the contractor or the excavator or whatever know that it's there. And with the temporary fences, those are easily moved and easily destroyed. If it's a more permanent fence, less opportunity for that. So that's something that we have felt that we would use. As far as the roofs, obviously bulk plane and height is always plane, is our game to try to get as much height in our buildings as we want to. And I feel that with the use of modern architecture that's really popular nowadays, there's a lot more flat roofs and less steeper pitches and things like that. So we, on our main gables, we used a 512 pitch, and then everything that's not a main gable, we sort of did shallower pitches, and also wanted to use, instead of asphalt shingles, we wanted to use standing seam metal roofing. And so that gives us opportunity, and that's a nice product for water protection and shedding of snow and moisture. So, and as far as the bulk plane violations, based on my design and how the computer generates those slopes, I took the worst case scenario, generated a plane up in 3D at the restricted height. And if it didn't violate on the low end, it sure wouldn't violate on the high end. So that's what that's showing, and there is no bulk plane violations, because as the site from 7th Avenue along Frisco Street, it gains elevation to the west. And so as you gain elevation, those bulk planes, if you were to put them every 2 feet, they would step up the hill, right? So that's the idea of that. And I'm happy to provide another rendering or whatever that would actually show that there is no violation. So I think I've been designing up here for many, many years, familiar with the area. So yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Mark.
Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, we'll do questions for you. We'll start with you, Andy. Any questions for the applicant?
Questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, could you just, the tandem parking, and I don't know if you can go to that stage. I feel like it looked kind of like it worked on all the units, but I was curious how it worked on unit 3.
Yeah, give me one moment.
Yeah, that question. And then my second question is, it didn't actually look like there was a consistent 5-foot buffer around the building. It looks like you went, you dropped down 5 feet from one,
There was only 2 spots that were less than 5
Yeah.
feet.
So I've just been noting that.
And that's just because at that point, there was no need for that because there were no window wells and a 4-foot buffer, I think, is adequate. So that's the reason for that. As far as the tandem parking unit 3, which is the unit in the southeast corner, that tandem unit, as you go into the garage, is offset, and you would just pull in that way. It's a same size space as a garage. I think it's 12 feet wide there. So it's a garage space. It just is offset a little bit. And these are a little bit oversized garages for toy storage, for skis, for things that people use in the mountains, you know. I mean, we don't want a lot of it cluttered around the property, and we want it enclosed in the garage.
And then just the last question, you see sign permit, what does that mean, chain link, what are you?
Yeah, probably a chain link fence that's pounded into the ground. And if it gets destroyed, you will definitely know it.
Questions, thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions for the applicant?
Is it okay to ask who's your client? Who's the developer?
His name is Aaron Gleckler.
Okay. And who is he? Just curious. Because you said he's gonna live here? So he said he's
Not gonna live here full time. He has a property here that he comes up every weekend already to ski with his family, and he's going to sell that and move into one of these.
Okay. But you said he's keeping 2 of the units.
I think for his extended family to
Okay.
use.
Who do you think will own these units? How will these be used? I mean, you've designed them.
I think it's gonna be a more permanent person.
Oh,
That
really?
I do. I think a larger unit doesn't, I mean, it is nice to have a large unit for VRBO and stuff like that, because you can put more people in it. But these are gonna be high dollar units, and I don't know that a VRBO can afford to have a higher priced unit. Again, I'm not into that game, and I'm just doing what my client asks, and he's hoping to sell it, resell. And
These units have rec rooms, saunas, hot tubs. They're like 5 bedrooms. I mean, they're designed for a short-term rental. But I understand that that's not your issue necessarily. I mean, I remember you when I used to work here 20 years ago. So I hope that you have some connection to Frisco. You've been working here a really long time, and I just feel like these are obviously designed with a purpose in mind. So apart from that, all the bedrooms have windows, right?
Mhm.
Okay, like the ones in the basement. The 2 bedrooms have windows. That's what the window wells are for.
those are-
Yeah, okay. It wasn't apparent to me when I first looked at it. Those are all my questions.
Ira, questions for the applicant?
Well, I heard you say oversized garage. So can you tell me, have you already picked the garage door sizes? Because that would let me know really what size the garage is.
Well, they're the 16-foot garage doors.
16, so not 18. Because,
Well, they could be 18. We could
well,
make,
that's what I'm asking, if you.
we haven't specified the exact size. If it would make you happier that it was 18, it would be 18. We didn't go with individual doors per se, because we know that a 16-foot garage doors allows more maneuvering and a larger footprint. So
18 even more,
absolutely.
right? And you also mentioned they're gonna be high dollar, so do you have a sense of where you're gonna be pricing these or where they're?
I personally don't.
Okay,
It's not my
just
job
only
to do that.
listened
I
to
was
what you're
given a design parameter, and that's what I designed to. And my job is to try to make it fit their budget and give them a product that they can enjoy and it can be received well into the community. And as Lena says, I've been working here for almost 30 years in Frisco. I have done a lot of projects in Frisco, and many of you probably see them every day. And I'm not here to do anything that's crazy and absurd. You know, the market is the market, and people are buying what they're buying, and you know, that's what the developers and people are trying to do, because their job is to try to make money and do what they need to do and that's what I do.
Okay. I'm done.
Robert, questions for the applicant?
Yeah. You've got two of the garages are backing out onto Seventh Avenue, and although Seventh isn't a through street. We do often talk about trying to minimize the number of cuts into a street that might have bicycles on it or people walking on it. Is there a way in which one of those two could come back to the alley so that you had two entrances from the alley instead of two on Seventh Avenue?
Yeah, if we could get a variance in the distance from the street to the driveway, we could reconfigure it probably pretty easily. But again, the distance between driveways has to be 30 feet. And then from the intersection at, we don't have the room based on the layout because the lower unit is shifted to the east because we don't want to infringe upon the steep slope area. And so that's part of the reason. If we were to get a leniency on the steep slope, then we could push everything further west and achieve your concern. Absolutely.
It's just a question. Are you going to use a retaining wall in the steep slope area?
There is no intent for retaining wall. Retaining wall is used in the opposite direction to retain dirt. This is 30% or less slope away from the building, so there's no need to retain that dirt.
And if we tell you that you have to maintain the required distance between buildings, how will you address that problem?
I think I'm only off by
Yeah, it's 11 and
4/8 inches.
Well, I'm still the same question. I mean,
I just move the wall to accommodate that. I think that's a computer error more than it is a drawing error. I think where I pulled the dimension from was on one of the different lines, not the actually 12-foot line.
I'm done.
Sorry, follow-up question. Do the garages, they have windows?
Yeah, there's a few that do have windows.
Oh, okay, because they were rendered the same way as like the rest of the windows. So those panels, are they see-through glass?
On the garage doors?
Yeah.
They can be, or they could be just metal. I don't know that we've decided exactly what the garage doors are going to be.
Okay. And just a kind of a question about the utility plan, and I know that's Joe, but the water lines were like squiggly lines, and
They come off
they
of,
curve.
they do curve. They come off of the corner at 7th and Frisco, because that's where everything ties in, the sewers and everything. And so they turn and do a little 45 or not a 45, whatever it is. And then they come around and they go in between the buildings. Yes, I mean, that's the only way to do it unless you go along the front perimeter and 90-degree it. And
Yeah, I guess I'm used to seeing utility lines be in straight lines or diagonals, not curves. Anyway,
I don't think they were curves. I think they were straight lines with bends in them at certain intersections.
all right, well,
And again, I can look at that in more depth.
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at.
Yeah,
it.
they're not curved. I mean, there is some curvature to it. Yeah, in certain areas.
Yeah, it's just, anyway. Thanks.
Any other question?
Can I,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit out of order, because I have just maybe a couple questions for staff, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think we could just dive in.
Okay, just so I understand the Frisco code, if they wanted to build additional units at 100% AMI, is that an option on this property, or is it not zoned for that?
It's not, because it's zoned residential low density, and that is not in the
Okay. And then my
bonus
other,
density.
my other question, I know there's dark sky lighting regulations in the town of Frisco. Are there like, sort of preservation of night sky intent regulations? And I'm asking basically on that huge window facade where that's, you can have a dark sky, compliant light, but you have that window, and I don't know what the point of the lighting regulation is.
Right, I guess I'd have to read more carefully on the intent, but they are required to meet the outdoor lighting requirements, which is the dark sky compliant lighting. When it comes to reflection, is that what you're talking about over the?
So the lighting, the exterior lighting absolutely will be dark sky compliant, but you have a window that's like an 18-foot tall window.
Or
and
unit-
it's
or unit two.
side,
Yeah.
You know, and that'll be lit up, nobody, you know, at some point. So just kind of, I'm curious about the code and the intent of dark sky preservation.
As far as I'm aware, it doesn't.
One addition on the 100% AMI units. The only opportunity for that would be if there was a.
Got it, but as the code is written, there would be no. Unless it were me.
Correct.
Additional questions? I have no questions, Mark. Thank you. At this time, I will open the floor to public comment on,
Stay here.
no, you can go back to
Okay.
your seat.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Mark. Any public comments on this agenda item? If so, please come to the podium, state your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes and your address. Come on, Suzanne. 5 minutes.
Johnston, I live at 615 Frisco Street. My brother-in-law's here, lives on the same block. There's just a couple of things that I wanted to, address. As far as our community plan goes, what about affordable housing? Why haven't we changed code where we've got an entire block that they're going to put 25 people on, and none of them are auxiliary units that the bartender can rent? I mean, shouldn't we be implementing this into our town code? I mean, that's a huge footprint. And like you said, and thank you very much for bringing it up, these are short-term rentals, guys. Have they applied for a license yet? And if they do they get that 5% tax that we passed? I'm just curious because that is a gigantic project. And when they scraped that, they misplaced 10 locals. They scraped away 10 rental units. So why don't we have something within our code, our town community planning code, that if you're going to build something of this square footage with this many bedrooms, you just have to. You have to supply a 1-car garage with a 650 square unit above it somewhere on the property. I mean, it's the only way that we're going to keep our town. Or it's going to go the way this gentleman is talking about, where the people that have the money are going to come and spend it. Of course, there isn't going to be any businesses for them to go to, but anyway, so that's one thing. On the 3D rendering thing, it looked like there were solar panels.
Those were bulk plane encroachment.
Okay, just curious.
Examples.
I was just curious if that was above,
No,
then
he's just using a different.
I just don't want to
mechanism.
lose that view to Gold Hill from my house. You know what I'm saying? And again, have they applied for short-term rental license?
You do have
So-
to have a property that's built in order to.
You do, you don't have it before. So when we pass that regulation about the taxing,
I think there was one project that was exempt from the regulation,
Yeah.
short term.
So you cannot apply for a short-term rental until it's actually owned by a person.
Yeah, that's-
And the occupant and the property is actually constructed as it's,
okay,
when the excise, or actually when the cap was passed, there's a cap 900 rental units.
right, and aren't we close?
We're at that number essentially.
Okay,
So, but when that was adopted, there was some exceptions for properties that were already under construction or had final approval. This is not qualifying for that, so.
Good to know.
This will fall under the cap.
and that property that's on the corner that they just are finishing up on the corner of 3rd and Frisco Street, one of those units is on Zillow for short-term, 11,000 a month. So, yeah. The fence, why? There is not a fence within 5 blocks. We have so much animal migration through there. Trust me, I live on that hill, okay? Every morning I walk down my block, down my street to go get my paper. And I do it very careful. The fox pees on my paper every morning. It's just hysterical. Spring and fall, there are moose on that property. There were 2 foxes that were born on that property about 6 years ago. One of them was hit on Frisco Street. If you can imagine someone driving fast enough to hit a fox on Frisco Street 3 years ago. The other one, she is on that property every single day, every day. So with window wells, we have to remember, we've got raccoons, we've got fox, we've got rabbits. I mean, all of these animals live on that block. I will bring pictures in if you don't believe me. So having fences, bad.
The fencing is just for the construction.
Just the construction.
Correct.
It will
Just
not
to
stay.
contain the soil disturbance, or not a permanent fence that's gonna be like surrounding the property.
So all the little critters right now are doing this.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Okay. And then thank you for bringing up the lighting on the inside. I was just thinking the same thing. If, you've got 10 people there, 8 people there, everybody's got TVs on and everything else, and those huge windows without any curtains or anything. I mean, it would be right into my bedroom window. So, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Susie. Is there any other public comment? Let's finish some public comment. Or you want to just, if you want to reply quickly.
I just want to encourage Suzanne, if you have recommendations on the code, to also voice those at the town council. They need to hear from you.
I was talking to Lisa about it yesterday.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Jeff Baum, 601 Frisco Street. My concern has to do with the plane of the way that unit 1 and 2 are on top of Frisco Street running east-west. And Frisco Street is one of the higher points in the town of Frisco. You come up from Main Street, and then from Frisco Street, you go down towards Bell's Ranch. So you've got this bulk plane of a unit that's running east-west. And I believe the tallest part of that building is on the west end of that. So you've got basically a wall on one of the highest points in the town of Frisco, pretty much creating a canyon wall up the top of Frisco Street. So my concerns are, if you look at the rest of the developments on Frisco Street, most of them, the planes are running north-south. And this one, you've got it running east-west, the length of the street. So that would be my only concern, is that you're creating a wall on one of the tallest parts in the town. And is it conceivable that the buildings could run north-south versus the length of the Frisco Street east-west? So that's my only concern.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Are there additional public comment at this time on this agenda item? There's anybody online, please unmute yourself and state your name if you have public comment. I am seeing none, so I will.
We got
oh,
one hand raised.
Oh, Stuart?
Yes, so I'm Stuart Baum. I own the property at 613 Frisco Street. And I'm curious if what kind of shade the building is going to cast during the wintertime. I didn't know about this at the beginning, when I should have been watching it starting probably October, November. How do we determine that? Because if I were to, in planning stages now to build a single family residence that I will be living at. And if I build just north of the offset on my property of that south line, will it be in shadow during a major part of the day?
Certainly, we can request a shadow study from the applicant, can we, or? Yeah, sure. we don't have something now unless the applicant wishes to speak on the shadow, or we could.
I could speak, is he south of our property?
I live on the north side of Frisco
You
Street,
live on north. of
directly
Frisco
across
Street.
the street from the proposed property.
Okay, we could do a shadow. Shadow study and it's easy to do with the computer. It can show it in plan form. I don't believe because of the offset. Or the setback on Frisco Street that we are gonna be anywhere near encroaching into Frisco Street very much because of the sun in the summertime, it's overhead, there won't be anything, but in the winter, it's more in the southern sky. And I just don't think that the shadows were not tall enough to get very far into Frisco Street, so. But I'm
Well, I'd
happy
like
to
to
do
see some.
a
I'd
shadow
like to-
study.
I'd like
I
to
think
see
that would
study
be
about
helpful
that.
for the next stage to see something like that for all of us would be helpful. Appreciate it. Any additional comments, Stuart?
No, I concur with the things that Suzanne and Jeff said. That's my main concern at this point.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the public at this time? I'm seeing none. I'm gonna close the public comment portion of this agenda item and we will move on to commissioner discussions. Would you mind putting back up the criteria you would like us to discuss this evening? And Andy, you want to start with your thoughts?
Yeah, so on the issue of the steep slope, I get sort of why the code is there, but I think that, especially walking by this lot and seeing what's been done. I understand trying to limit the disturbance on that steep slope, but I'm fine with the current plan and just kind of keeping an eye on it, but I think that we can approve it the way it's shown, as long as they can build it the way it's shown. I sort of agree with staff on the north elevation of buildings 3 and 4, of units 3 and 4. I think we need to work on the architectural features and sort of the relief on that elevation. I think that has some issues and can be better, can be made to look like the rest of the building. It seems pretty out of place. Frankly, I think both of the interior elevations of the buildings that face each other could use a little glow up, so they look a little bit more like the rest of the buildings. Those two elevations particular, a little bit boring. The roof elements, I'm fine with. The scale you asked about, I think the scale's fine. I think it steps with the hill nicely. Building colors in general, I think are fine. I am a little bit concerned with the one stone on the material board looks awfully white, and we've had some issues with white stone and people not really enjoying the white stone. The sample on the screen here that I'm looking at from the online sample board looks much more of a gray color. And if we can keep the stone more in those gray ranges and out of the kind of quartz looking white colors, I would appreciate that. And I think that we can direct staff to kind of keep an eye and make sure that it's a little bit more in the gray and not that quartz white color. But other than that, landscaping diversity was one other question. I think that seems like a pretty easy fix, and they should come into and meet that code. That's pretty easy to fix, so I would expect them to fix that. Yeah, I think I hit all the points, but I can comment if I missed any.
Thank you. Jessica?
Yeah, I think overall, this needs disturbance. I kind of construction team and put a team. That's up to you guys. No issue. I don't parking again. No doubt in terms of the facades, you'll dress it up for the next round. I do have a concern. I'll kind of stick by with what I said with the that huge windows. Lighting regulations for a reason. like that, you know, even if some died and they do kind of those half lines, they're gonna have for them that's trying to, you know, anything else, and then not to you, but yeah, I think this is just another project that we're seeing that, you know, it meets the. There are some opportunities lost with what we're seeing here.
Lena? Yeah, I think I'm gonna pretty much agree with what you just said, Jessica. I think, yeah, you know, meet the code with the steep slope disturbance. No issue with the tandem parking. Really, I think what Andy and Jessica have said, I think the architecture could be dressed up a little, as I'm sure you will. I would like to see a construction management plan with the final site plan, or whatever you call it, final site plan, and also the bulk plane be rendered better so that we can see. I mean, we've had other architects show the complete bulk plane in 3D, and if we can do that so that you see how it projects out, that'd be great. And yeah, I understand that this meets the code, but like Jessica said, I just think one project at a time, we're turning this town into something that it hasn't been and shouldn't be, so.
Thank you, Ira.
I'll jump on the bandwagon. Andy said a lot of what was on my mind, the white color, I saw that. The thing that is standing out to me is the encouraged 612 pitch, and there's not a 612 in the whole design. And I'm looking at side view here. I mean, he achieves maximum height of 30 feet. And it's the lower pitched roofs that gives one the latitude or the ability to have the kind of volume he has and still not pierce that 30-foot mark. So I'm looking at a couple of sides here. I mean, I understand a shallower pitch on a true shed roof, but I'm looking at a gable that looks to me like a house from the 50s, the 1950s. And I just think, just to reinforce from a different angle that this meets code, but it's not one to put a badge on to be hugely proud of. I mean, it just architecturally, there's that one alley where the two sides face each other. And you said it needs some work, be dressed up, but it meets code. I'm disappointed on some of the roof elevations. Nothing hits a 612, and that's it.
Thank you, Ira. Robert, your comments?
Yeah, first comment is to staff. And I'm continue to be frustrated, and I've said this in previous ones. We have in our community plan, section 11A says ensure new housing complements adjacent property. Oops, I'm sorry, 11C. Strive to create an appropriate balance of full-time residents, second homes, and short-term rentals to maintain a diversity and a vibrant community. We continue to quote that as what we're doing. We're not doing that. This doesn't do that in any manner, form, or means. And if we approve this project, we shouldn't do it quoting that part of our own community plan. That's lying to ourselves. Additionally, sorry, I get off on this. On 2.1b, provide appropriate opportunities for a balanced mix of housing and services to support businesses, employees, residents, and visitors. Again, it doesn't do that. If this all goes to short-term rentals or some version of short-term rentals, we aren't meeting those codes, and we shouldn't quote our own community plan to justify it using at least those chapters. Now, there may be others that you can use, but I get frustrated, as do others on this committee, that we continue to build projects and approve projects that simply don't meet what we intend to do, which is to add workforce housing, add affordable housing to our community mix. And one day people in this community are gonna wake up and there's gonna be no services because there's gonna be no one to service them. I would agree on the white. The last time that we saw a board and we didn't pay enough attention, we all live to regret that. And so I hope that when they come back, there's a board with specific gray rather than white. I would love Unit 3 to exit in the alley, but I also know that there's some other problems with that. I think you gotta solve the space between buildings. Yes, it may only be a ½ an inch, but you know what? The next person comes in and wants to have 2 inches and says, well, you gave the guy a ½ inch. So I think you gotta be, you gotta stick to the rules. I would encourage a shadow study or require a shadow study. I think I would agree with Ira on roof pitches. I would really encourage you to go back and try and, I'm not sure why our code simply says we encourage this pitch, but then we don't have a way to enforce that pitch. So there's a reason we encourage that pitch. And I'd love you to come back with some pitches that fit within the code recommendation. And I hope that you fix the other elements that staff has pointed out. I'm done.
Thank you, Robert. Any additional comments or? I'd agree with what Andy said, that there's a couple elevations that just are not meeting kind of the right aesthetic, and that we could work on that. The site, looking at it today, like what happens in the past to these sites and the slope disturbance can just be impossible to monitor and fix, but I'm comfortable with how we've handled it here. And I do expect that it's done appropriately and we don't have, trees go missing where they shouldn't, or half of hillsides gone when they were there. I like the look of it. I agree with windows, but I also think at our climate that people are like, it's freezing and I'm not going to heat the outdoors, so that they'll put up blinds. I would like to see that scaled down a little bit. It seems very bright. And I'd like to echo that. I agree that it's unfortunate to see this not be housing, and fortunately it's not our privy to put it on individual owners. And I'd like to see more in our codes to do things and actual buildings being built by our government to help do this. And so hopefully some of these great projects coming down the board will achieve some of this, because we are in a dire situation in our community. And where's that silver bullet? I don't know, but I mean, it's hard to see 10 locals displaced on this property and something going in that is not going to be at a local threshold. But I don't think our purview is to price these for people, but I think the code needs to continue to evolve, and council needs to hear more about this, as we are bound by a code, not the changing of codes so much. So that's my piece on that as a community, we need to do better. But I do like this project. I think it's nice. And I really actually like the burnt black wood board, but I would not like to see it contrasted by a very bright white stone. So thank you. And
Kelsey, one other comment.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the windows that Jessica mentioned. I live across the street from one of those units that we approved and built that is short-term occupied and has a large window. And you can't believe how many nights those lights are left on all night long, and it just kind of disturbs the night sky. So I don't know how we address that at some point in urban code.
Thing that we can require on larger windows, like
That's something we'd have to look into. That's, yeah.
That's not like some, like,
But just.
maybe something when we do code revisions that in the, you know, Jessica's comment, like, what's the purpose of this if, like, the intent of the night sky, if you can have a glass house that you just have a little down pointing outside light, but it's lit up, you know, so I think certainly something maybe we add to our long-term goals of reestablishing what the intent is there. Because in all the new modern, it's windows and rooftop decks. There's no rooftop decks, is there?
No.
Yeah, I thought there
Well,
were.
well, there's one here. Yeah, there
Yeah,
is.
see?
Yeah, there's a couple of them.
I guess it's not on the roof. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, this one.
Oh, okay, sorry. But those are my comments. Any additional?
If you could pull up A 3.4, where we see a lot of that stone. Where you got? Anyway, I'm just wondering, is that more than 27 or 28 feet?
Eight, three, four.
A 3.4.
Talking about height or length?
That whole stone facade,
Down here.
how long is that?
I don't know.
I mean, this is barn wall here. I mean, it seems a pretty large plane to me. So that would have been a question I would have had before if I remembered. Yeah.
I think we asked you to fix those, but I don't think that the 27 feet that you're quoting, I think that's from the norm.
Oh, is that right?
They have to have 4 of the.
Station required in that space?
They have to have 4 of the architectural elements, and that's what we're saying, maybe they need to spice up some architectural elements on this elevation, but I don't think that they're required to break it up every 27 feet. I think that's.
Okay. I'm done.
Sure.
I'm home.
Robert sounded like he was gonna just put it down and leave. Any more comments on sketch plan? Do you have what you need from us, Mark, for the next go around?
Yeah, and do you issue, I forget, what do you issue out your guys' comments or in a staff report?
We will have minutes at the next planning commission that are approved from this meeting, which will have some comments in them.
And there's always the recording online too, if you would just need to get to sleep and rewatch it.
There's a YouTube channel.
I mean,
Well, thank you for your time.
the material work. I really do appreciate all of your guys' comments and concerns, but again, I'm not doing something that I'm trying to ruin the community, so.
We understand. It's a hard conundrum we're all in.
Well, it is, because we live in a community, you guys live in a community that's desirable for a lot of people to come visit and spend a lot of money in. And they want to live here part-time and they want to have nice homes. And yet it's a, you know, you got to find other places to put affordable housing and have the governments pay for it and things like that. So it's not solvable by all of us. It takes larger community, so.
Well, thank you very much. Hopefully we have some good projects in the pipeline that will help put a dent in. Thank you. All right, closing that agenda item and moving on. Let's do a 5-minute break. Please. So we'll resume
Yeah.
at 6:15. 6 minutes. All right, we will resume tonight's meeting with agenda item number 2, planning file number UDC 23 003. A public hearing to consider proposed amendments to Frisco Town Code, Chapter 155, minimum street design standards, and Chapter 180 of the Unified Development Code related to the downtown complete streets plans. Susan?
Oh, yeah. 1 month. There you go. You should-
Thank you. This is the second time you guys are seeing this item. Right, so as you know, these were recommendations from the Complete Streets Plan that was adopted in March of 2022. You guys reviewed this in a work session on March 2nd. Town Council also reviewed these items on March 28th. And now we're presenting them to you for your recommendation in an ordinance to council. Some of these items are just cleanups that the consultant team from the Complete Streets Plan recommended. Some of them are changes to incorporate the downtown Complete Streets Plan. Let's see. I have a slide for each of the changes, and the changes are highlighted in red. Since we've seen these before, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and run through them, and you guys can ask me questions at the end or ask for any changes. So this is just Chapter 155, streets and public ways. We're bringing that downtown Complete Streets Plan into this chapter so that we have the definitions for all of the downtown street types. We also are saying that the dimensional standards from the downtown Complete Streets Plan apply here. The minimum street design and access criteria. This chapter is kind of a supplement to Chapter 155. It contains the more detailed technical criteria for street design in the town. And so in the introduction to this section, we're adding a reference. The downtown streets shall refer to the downtown Complete Streets Plan. We're going to go ahead and clean up the street classifications. We're removing 8th Avenue as an example for collector streets. It is actually a local residential street with a lower speed. And we're also clarifying that Main Street access is prohibited, not just discouraged, unless no alternative exists. This is a design speed guidance type or table for street types. And we added the downtown street types. This doesn't change the speed on any existing streets. I know that was a public comment. We also added clarifying language that design speed and posted speed should be the same. Just referencing the Complete Street Plan for widths. More information on turning radius design as recommended by our transportation engineer. This language specifies the design vehicle to be used for downtown streets and gives flexibility of design based on a review by the Public Works
Can
Director.
I interrupt you a minute? We talked about reducing the radius in this section. And back on page 6, under the design speeds chart, minimum center line radius, there we lengthened or we enlarged the radius. So are we going against ourselves at this point?
I think it was more for consistency based on the design vehicle that our transportation engineer was using.
So we're actually increasing.
In this case, we are, but these, for the minimum center line radius, yeah. And I guess we did go back and forth a little bit about can we reduce them further, but I think for the design vehicle that we were using, they felt this was the smallest we could go.
I just noted a discrepancy between the two sections.
Is the radius? I know we referenced the radius in a second place. If there's a conflict, we should
Well,
correct it.
Just to clarify too, this radius is related to the intersections themselves rather than center line radius.
Okay.
Line of the road. is what this.
Okay,
Two different types of.
okay, yes,
Okay,
sorry.
The smaller radius on intersections like this is so you have tighter turns, so you have to slow down.
sorry, so this is that language with the design vehicle, the DL 27, and there's language also about buses and larger vehicles. This was, my understanding was the turning radius movements as recommended by the transportation engineer, as opposed to the center line radius. And these are the parking lot dimensional standards. And so we've moved this chart to be in line with the text in this section, as opposed to being kind of hanging out in chapter 155. And then we actually removed that graphic because we have graphics in chapter 180 that illustrate the parking lot dimensional standards. And they do not look like they were manufactured on a fax machine. So
What does this do to our parking lots that we currently have? How is it different from what we currently do?
same chart. It's the same chart. It's just been reorganized and put in a new place.
Why doesn't the chart belong in the, like with the rest of the parking stuff?
Chapter 180, you mean?
I get,
Some-
yeah.
Some of the information is redundant between the two chapters.
And I would also say that 180 is mostly for on-property design. A lot of this is for on.
Oh,
This is
so this is for a public parking lot?
or public right of way as well, and that's the diet.
Oh, okay.
All right, this is the width of driveway standards. We were updating these to allow a wider access for multifamily dwellings and align with chapter 180 where it's also shown. It creates a hierarchy for access for properties abutting two rights of way. Driveways are preferred to access alleys or unimproved right of way first, then streets without a crossing pathway, and then streets with a pathway.
Good question. Oh, do they have, do Public Works have any issues with the 24-foot wide driveway that we need to clarify?
They do not. Fire occasionally requests a wider driveway, and then Public Works would issue a waiver for a 26 foot wide driveway.
Susan, does multifamily dwellings, does that include townhomes?
So multifamily would be 3 or more.
So it can be townhomes. Okay, because somewhere I had seen where townhomes was lumped in with that first category, single family duplexes and townhomes. I don't remember exactly where though, so sorry. But
That might have been on the last set of code amendments.
With the administrative versus minor versus major site plan.
Types of administrative site.
Yep.
Okay.
And we did some rearranging with that because it didn't make sense.
One for consistency.
good.
This section also adds a requirement that the town should work to remedy existing non-conforming curb cuts and right-of-way encroachments that negatively impact walking routes.
You go back, that's one back actually.
Mhm.
The access for properties, I think we kind of talked about this in terms of what's moving. Driveways are preferred to access, alleys or unimproved rights of way first, then streets. Don't know if preferred is strong enough.
Required
I
or,
don't know if it's, like, shall do this unless, the applicant can
no alternative.
demonstrate something. I just think it needs to be a tiny bit stronger to still have that released out.
I mean, we sort of saw that in the roof standards that, we encourage this kind of roof pitch and then people come in with a whole project with no roof pitch like that.
Adding language that the design of bike ped facilities shall comply with the cross sections of the downtown complete streets plan. That's it. Now we're into chapter 180, which is our land use code. we're adding language to support the requirements that driveway access should not be provided across the pathway unless no other alternative is possible. Alleys or unimproved rights of way are the preferred access route. We're also adding language to require developers to construct the right-of-way facilities, including parking and pathways as shown in the Downtown Complete Streets or Frisco Trails and Pathways Plan.
In D should be stronger, be a shall there as well. If we're trying to be consistent. Firm.
Shall or should, either way, it's fine.
And, yeah, I guess I'm looking at this one too, unless no other alternative is available. I mean, you can always come up with some crazy practicable alternative.
But that one and the one in 155 should almost be very similar language.
Okay. There are the non-vehicular access requirements, just again referencing Downtown Complete Streets and the updated Trails and Pathways Plan. We're also adding the requirement that the Downtown Complete Streets Plan improvements should be constructed as part of their development. And then for the parking standards and criteria, this is just restating the requirement that developers install right-of-way improvements in conjunction with their development, and that the spaces created can be used for on-street parking credits. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Robert?
No, I'm still struggling way back at the very beginning with, access from Main Street, which I really like. It's number 5. At the very beginning. But it feels like that sentence needs something else in it. It says access directly from Main Street is prohibited. Access to what? Access to.
Property. Yeah, it's in the section about access.
Okay. It just, when I read it, it just always, I read it about 4 times before.
Vehicular access.
Yeah.
Where are we talking about? Under
Number
other?
5. Where it says access on that last one. Yeah, I see what you're saying, that it's like vague.
Yeah, there's a,
It's sometimes better for us because if I say driveway and they say, oh, that's not a driveway, that's just a delivery drop-off area, something like that. You know what I mean?
Vehicular access would be about the only clarification.
Maybe you could add that.
I'd probably like vehicular access. That would make it better.
Yeah, access just seems too broad to me. Like access of what?
Pedestrian access.
We're in a chapter though, that's called minimum street design and access criteria, so there's some content. I think.
You're thinking people are that smart?
Mhm.
That's an assumption, huh?
Okay, what's next? You guys are idiots.
Under street classification, so yeah.
Yeah, okay, so. It's implied. We don't want to anger him.
I'm sorry, were you going around or?
Oh, no, please pipe in, it feels a little more.
Comes to getting developers to build the parking or sidewalks or whatever is included. That within a certain distance of their, because it would almost always be off of their property, right? Because it's right of way that we're talking about. Are we specific about where we're
Yeah.
talking about, like within 300 feet, or like what are they required? How do we define what portions of the complete street?
So
Part of
like
their
center
project.
line, or should it be contiguous with their development? We could add,
I thought we had. Is that what it says?
I think we added contiguous to your,
We did
affordable
add
housing.
contiguous.
And we could,
You won the contiguous.
yeah,
what's gonna be expected if it's just, some people, is it, if you border 3 streets and you're required to build parking completely?
Yeah.
So just want to make sure that that's really clearly
Yeah.
laid out. I'm not saying it's not right now.
I could see it saying add that language for contiguous.
Are we expecting them to pave the road or just the sidewalk?
Yeah, like when it's an alley that's not paved, we want people to pave the alley?
It's in the downtown complete streets plans.
There aren't probably a whole
And
lot.
downtown, in downtown they all are, right?
Yeah.
Except for
Oh.
alleys. Well, and that's not in downtown.
So this, but what about the alleys that are not in downtown? Like if a
That's not part
developer
of it.
builds a fourplex and
Like tonight's agenda item.
it's not.
There's an
part of
alley
this
there
one.
that's,
Yeah, but it's not in downtown.
Oh,
so it's
yeah,
not
so-
governed by the complete streets
Yeah.
plan.
We could change adjacent to. We could add some language about it being contiguous with street.
So we don't require anything of the developer who's building a fourplex outside of the downtown area.
If you are adjacent to a path, a planned pathway facility that's in the Frisco Trails and Master Plan. The Trails and Pathways Master Plan, you would have to put that trail in, but no street.
We're not requiring sidewalks outside.
If that said, I think this is something that I would strongly encourage going and pushing on radar. That the last application we saw last month. Oh, no.
It's a DRC agenda.
Sorry, but there's a development using an unimproved alley, and we saw it with Creekside as well.
That's right, yeah.
and
Yeah.
Maybell too, right?
So there is, the regulations are not clear on what the requirements for use of improvement of undeveloped. I would say that it should be the developer's responsibility to develop it to town standards to the property line. Rather, because we see stuff, we're just gonna use a.
What does
unpaved
that land on,
driveway,
though?
It's gonna be gravel and then we'll pave our little parking pad. It just doesn't make logical sense.
Yeah.
And it actually impacts the street because all that gravel then ends up impacting the road surface as well.
What are your thoughts on who does that? Like
The
for,
developer.
but there's like a couple parcels where there's been developments within the last 5 years and then it's like, does that land on the final developer to do the street? Like, I think it needs to be.
I would say yes. Boston, I'm sorry, it should have,
But shouldn't the first have to do
they
it?
should have, they would choose.
Yeah,
They should
yeah.
have had to, but that regulation wasn't. But I think that is something that, should be considered. And
Where does that go? Is
I
that?
don't know yet, and I think
Okay.
that's something that. We'll get to Susan later, but I
so.
think it is something that should be addressed.
I mean, I fully agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's like cost sharing or something, but yeah.
And we saw
Otherwise, the
that.
town will be asked to develop it later.
It's almost like, could you put like a bond on the original developer that like, by the time all these are developed, you're gonna have to pay your share of the street thing,
I think about.
in all, because we have so many parcels that are kind of sitting there that have, either vacated right of ways or whatever it may be, and it's like, or alleys that just been grandfathered, and it's like, okay, well, we gotta figure out who pays for it and how it actually gets done. Cause I think they should be, if there's a house, like, that's, you're paying 4 million to be at, probably want it paved.
I think that is something for another day. I did
Yeah.
probably not appropriate for this section. We're focusing on that. I think that is something that should be on it.
Are we working on a plan similar? I know you've got a lot of time on your hands.
Yeah.
Can we put together a complete streets plan for the rest of town, like what we would consider to be minimum development standards in the town? The collector streets and the residential streets, like just to kind of have an outline of that, something we could point to and say, we want you to bring it up. It just seems like, because we've talked, when we were talking about the complete streets plan, there were some streets that are just outside of that scope that I think are really critical that we talk about. So it seems like it might be time to start putting it on the radar.
And we have talked multiple times about creating a new or updating our 1984 transportation master plan.
Wow.
Got so much time on our hands.
Time to work on this so we can get started on
So
it.
at the next meeting, we should see the first draft.
I think that this minimum street design chapter or section has enough requirements to implement a new policy that says if you are developing on an alley that's unimproved, you need to bring the alley up to the minimum street design standards.
Well, you know, we talked, I know it was, Donna used to get really on curb and gutter or pans.
Yeah.
Drainage and stuff. If we wanted to at least kind of say that if you're working on a street, you have to bring it up to at least certain
Yeah,
minimum standards.
totally.
Outside of the score, it would be nice to have something to point to.
Yeah, something concrete that like you could actually use. And,
I mean, the
speculative.
reality is, all these redevelopments have an impact on the existing system. Those redevelopments should be responsible.
First.
Or sidewalks that just end.
Awesome.
Any other
Great
comments
work.
or
This is awesome. That's
questions?
a lot of work.
All
lot of
right, You've
work.
been so quiet.
No, I was, only in the streets are,
They don't get you going? Somewhere though.
they do. To the sidewalk to nowhere.
Yeah.
Walk down the street,
Oh,
walk on a
I
nice
got a
sidewalk
couple.
and
One is triggered to be fixed this summer, the CDOT one though, that goes on the on-ramp. I am pumped about that. Truly, I am. I'm not being sarcastic. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I didn't follow all of Tom Connolly's comments, especially some of the stuff that he was, just because I couldn't picture it in my mind.
Like
I
Meadow
just-
Creek.
Yeah, because I don't live over there, so I don't pay attention, but I didn't know if we could address some of those comments, whether they were,
Yeah, all good points. He was talking about there's a bus stop behind Walmart.
yeah.
And there's no sidewalk on the north side.
Yeah.
Or sorry. the
North side, east side.
Side of
Yeah.
Meadow Drive. And it's been brought up before. We have some information about it in our Trails and Pathways Master Plan. It's just a matter of getting it into our capital improvements.
Okay. He was talking about a guardrail?
Yeah, so there's a guardrail along the north side of Han Drive.
Okay.
That makes it hard for people to walk on that side of Han Drive. And then as you turn between the north side of Han Drive and the east side of Meadow, you go from, no sidewalk to a guardrail. It's just a difficult area for.
except this plan doesn't deal
Has
with
nothing
what's
to
going
do with it.
on in Hung Drive.
Downtown street, so Galena to Granite.
I will say though, and this, what we're talking about over my Meadow Pond is not really what I talk about, but we have town councils and staff is working on developing a 5-year capital program. And one of those sections is kind of a new thing is identifying these disconnections in the pathway system. And an example would be over by the fire station, coming off the roundabout. All I saw this year where it was plowed along the highway.
I
and
like
there's a
that.
Huge wall of snow there and there was nowhere to go. And that we really need another 30 feet of sidewalk to get to the crosswalk so you can get across to the path at 8.
Like,
Yeah.
ride your bike or walk through the intersection.
Yeah, you really can't. So we're trying to identify some of those and have a little thing of funds in the capital program to fix.
Well, thank you for all your hard work on this. Any other comments or? So we, a motion on this then?
I got it.
Did you want to take public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Streets, if there's anybody online, please raise your hand if you wish to make public comment. Elizabeth, the floor is yours. Please state your name for the record.
Elizabeth Fanning. We live at 300 Granite Street. And I want to thank you all for your service and much appreciated. a little comment on the microphones. It makes it very hard to hear a lot of you. It seems to get a little more relaxed as the day goes on. So please speak into the microphones because there are times when we can't hear anybody on this end when we're not present. And if I could be, I would be. But we live on Granite, and I was just curious as to, we talk about collector streets. Is Granite now one of those? And we saw the options presented for the sidewalks and the bike paths. And there are some options that, and I know a lot of the community offered their opinions. And then in the options that were provided, we didn't see a lot of that comment taken into consideration. So are we going to have a chance to address that? And if so, maybe when? And if I'm out of line, please tell me if this is going to be addressed at a different time.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Susan, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. We actually are working on, so these are code changes as opposed to implementation of the design that you probably helped participate in when we were working on the Downtown Complete Streets plan. So we have moved forward with some design drawings for Granite Street. And we are in the process of kind of vetting the conceptual designs at this time. And we'll be having a public open house in May where people can take a closer look at what might be happening along Granite Street, specifically to their house. And we'll make sure that we promote that meeting on all the social channels and on our website and things like that.
Okay, appreciate it. And, you know, we bear the brunt when downtown, which we love, closes for the summer. We bear the brunt of all of the traffic both ways. Is there any consideration for Galena to become part of one way and Granite to become part of the other way? Because that's not even an option and I don't see it presented and we really don't understand why.
I can try to help, but it might be a question better directed at our transportation engineer who would be there in May at that meeting.
Okay.
The idea of the one-way system was tossed around. I think it didn't receive a lot of community support, to be honest. And again, I don't know if there was some specific reasons in terms of traffic volumes and speeds that the traffic engineer didn't select it as kind of a final option, but you could probably get more information from them at that May meeting.
And they'll be present at that meeting. That's
Yeah,
what I understand.
they're facilitating the design process and they'll be kind of helping host that meeting.
Okay. All right. Do we know who that is?
Yeah, it's the same company that did the Downtown Complete Streets plan. They're called Tool Design Group.
Tool Design. All right. Well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We appreciate your comments. Any additional comments from the public at this time? I'm seeing none, so we will close the public comment portion of this agenda item. No additional discussion from anyone?
I'll make a motion. Do we want to add a condition to address the more, what was it? Not restrictive, the more stronger language that was brought up in a couple of those.
Yeah, I don't know, you don't have to necessarily do it as a condition, so, but you could recommend approval with the changes as discussed during the meeting.
Okay. I'll do the motion then. With respect to file number UDC 23 0003, I move that the recommended findings set forth in the April 6, 2023 staff report be made and that the Planning Commission hereby recommends approval to the Town Council of the code text amendments to Frisco Town Code Chapter 155 minimum street design standards and Chapter 180 of the Unified Development Code related to the Downtown Complete Streets Plan. Incorporating the changes as discussed by the Planning Commission.
Second.
Cheryl, will you please call a vote?
Commissioner Franklin,
Yes.
Commissioner Tame,
Yes.
Alexis,
Yes.
Commissioner Withrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Forsyth,
Yes.
Commissioner Stabile.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Susan, for all your work. Before we move on to staff updates, I want to thank Dawn for his time here at Frisco and his leadership, and we wish you the best. You will be missed by our commission. And thank you, Robert.
For one meeting.
Come along, sticking to you.
So this is my last meeting.
All right, well, we would like to thank you for your service and all of your insights, and I hope somebody champions all the ADA and women's bathrooms like you have. And whoever fills your vacancy, and we wish you the best of luck.
It's been an honor to serve with you all, and to serve the town in this capacity. It's been wonderful.
We
We're
thank
gonna
you
miss
both.
you.
We will
I'm
miss
gonna,
you.
I'm gonna do the ADA thing, take that on, okay? I'll bring that up.
In personal accessibility. Universal accessibility. I like it. In memory of Robert.
Yeah.
In honor. Because I'm altering, geez, it's been a while, I'm out of practice there. All right, any updates for us?
Yeah, I have a few updates you guys might be interested in. As you know, we've been working with the Forest Service on the backyard plan. And we are entering, shortly, we'll be entering the public scoping period. So if you want to mark your calendars, we'll obviously send some reminders, but May 2nd at the Day Lodge, the Forest Service will be hosting a public input session for the.
What is this?
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. For like the Rainbow Lake, like just continuing on what they've been doing and.
But we're kind of the phase up there where we're gonna start managing it a little bit more akin to what we do. So we get to kind of have a little bit more say in just listening to what our service wants to do. We get that. What's getting cleared, what's getting mitigated up there. The old non-sustainable trails, we've been on Hatties. Hatties is.
Yeah, the new Hatties is great.
So to see what the rest of those trails end up being.
Sorry, you said what time is that?
It'll be May 2nd, probably at 5 p.m.
So does this mean we're entering a street, partnership with CDOT too? And they're gonna start listening to us? Or am I being hopeful?
Well, and I will, on that note, CDOT actually really has listened. I mean, we talk about the Trails Master Plan, and that's why that underpass was developed in addition to Susan writing a grant to get it funded. But because that Trails Plan was there, and because we got sidewalks along as part of that project, we got the underpass. So they do listen. We have a plan in place.
Are we gonna get the bike path to connect that underpass to something?
On the county side, or I'm sorry, on the town side, on the PRA side, the town is gonna do some improvements on that side this summer. And
Or on ramp?
they're going to try to work with the county to do some connection, maybe county open space and trails could,
Excitement that I just unleashed? Darn.
That's not.
Not a very long connection.
No.
It is terrifying to be on an on-ramp, just being like, hey, here I'm walking.
Is there anything to get middle school kids to the middle? Cross at that intersection, they've been.
The bridge or the underpass.
Bridge or an underpass, is that on anybody's radar? right
It's
now?
still in the plan. It's definitely still on the radar.
Wait, which
Are you talking about School Road?
School Road.
School Road?
Yeah.
Kids are like,
Yeah,
even with the cars on. Highway
Yeah.
9, It's terrifying.
It is.
I
And
really
we
hope
had
they're not
somebody,
Waiting for somebody to get hit.
and we had somebody hit there not too long ago.
Well, along the side.
And Meadow Creek.
different,
on the
yeah.
side. But the kids in that intersection are just.
I saw all the kids. I went to get my car washed.
I agree.
Right, and then I got out.
It is in our Trails Master Plan.
That,
Trails Master Plan. Yeah, it is in the Trails and Pathways Master Plan. Next update is just that May 23rd Planning Commission Town Council joint work session. If there are some things that you would like to see changed in our code, in particular in relation to housing, this will be your opportunity to show up and have that
Do
conversation.
we have a guest appearance?
Robert, can you come for real?
Like, we
Can you
got the notice while you were still a commissioner, so you just have to attend.
I mean, it's just a passionate voice that really
Yeah.
carries.
Susan, what was that date?
That is gonna be Tuesday, May 23rd, 5 PM. Dinner will be served.
And inclusionary zoning will be a topic. So again, that was been much discussed.
Okay. Do we need to respond to your email to make sure?
Because when we find out a couple of days before a meeting that we don't have a quorum, important legislation like affordable housing ordinances cannot be passed. So if you're passionate about getting that stuff to happen, you need to let us know and you need to show up for the meetings. We can't do it without you, okay? So yes, an RSVP would be great. Thank you.
To be clear, you said, let me know if you're not coming.
That one is not as big, but lately we've had a really hard time finding out whether or not people are coming to our meetings. And when we have things like ordinances on the table, we can't take them to town council without you guys' recommendation. They sit stagnant. So you can help us by letting us know ahead of time and then we can schedule things accordingly. So the more you can tell us and the more you can tell us in advance, the better off we all are.
Okay, we'll be better.
Thank you. We'll try to do better. We'll hunt
House
you down if we
Fest,
have
any
to.
update on
I'm not done.
Sorry.
We got more. We got more.
I also wanted to let you guys know, I don't know if any of you are, I don't know if any of you, you may have gotten a survey in the mail about the promenade and parklets.
Yeah.
And so we've reached out to both residents and business owners to try to gauge, people's appetite for doing a parklet or a promenade again this summer, or both. We're also having a public meeting mainly geared at the business community because we didn't get a great response from them during the survey on next Thursday, the 14th at Highside.
And that's 5 to 6.
Sorry, what did I say?
13.
Not the 13th.
Next Thursday, the 13th. Thursday, the 13th.
Do you only want business owners though at that one or?
We got a pretty good response rate. I think we got 800 residents to reply to like the statistically valid survey, which is really good. We only got maybe 30 or 40 business owners to reply. So we're really trying, if you know a business owner that, you know, is in this kind of corridor, Main Street corridor, spread the word. But yeah, you're welcome to come and share
Thursday,
your
May
thoughts.
13th.
Yep, a week from today.
Can you share what people said or you?
We don't have the results yet.
Oh, you don't?
Um,
Okay.
they're in the process of kind of pulling it together, and that will be presented to town council at a work session on May 9th. But we'll make the information available to everybody. So the survey has closed, but we are having this.
You can recycle that.
But you're welcome to come and share your thoughts at the public meeting at the Highside. And then the last item would just be letting you guys know that we do have a RFP out for a redesign of Triangle Park. So changes might be coming. to
That's
that
the
park.
front
Mhm.
Frisco Park.
Try to
Expanded.
re-envision that area now that it's a little bit bigger and is the traffic situation is a little bit different in that area. So we're looking at the future of Triangle Park.
What are you hoping for there? Like, obviously not just more grass, but like, we're not talking about building a music venue on the corner.
Splash pad.
Like, could we just do trampolines, like bury trampolines over the, people could just jump street? No, I'm just kind of, cause I saw that come out and I was like.
Yeah.
It's not really clear on what's sort of in this, the range of possibility for that side. I'm curious what you guys are.
But so we haven't really put anything pen to paper yet. We're just really looking for a company that will help us go out to the public, hear what people's thoughts are. It's kind of been discussed that maybe it's underutilized, you know, could it be more than, could it just be beefed up or prettied up? You know, what do people want to see there and taking it from there?
Is Walter Byron complete? Their park renovation? I thought there was like a
There's-
delay or something on the.
There is another phase that was supposed to be completed last summer. We've had a hard time finding contractors to complete the work at that park, so we're.
And
we're
what's
probably gonna
that
phase it.
final piece?
That final piece would be,
Gazebo or?
yeah, it would be improving the gazebo,
The dock. Or the walkout.
yeah, a little wetland
No, there was one. there.
viewing platform. It would be over land. It wouldn't be over
Oh.
water. And then, some bank stabilization along the creek there. Those are my updates. I don't know if anybody else has anything.
How about Foots Rest? What are those just big projects that we've got coming in the pipeline with permits submitted that you've seen recently? Foots Rest is under review. They resubmitted, or building plans to address comments made during plan review. Those last week, so anticipate building department will be looking at those over the course of the next month. Still planning on breaking ground this summer and beginning construction this summer. 80 West Main has submitted building permits. You remember you approved that one back in September-ish, maybe?
The big, huge building?
Yeah. The large property at 80 West Main. The Base Camp Studios have submitted their permits. That's the one up by Alpine Inn. So there's gonna be a lot of construction on the Slopeside Hall is gonna be breaking ground in a month. That's out at the by the Day Lodge there, and Granite Park is gonna be breaking ground on April 7th.
Anything on Highway 9 this summer?
That is actually happening as well. The medians.
Centura?
Oh, the Centura housing.
Centura.
To make them better, to clean them
Make
up,
them better.
to put in some landscape.
And around the pretty.
Yeah.
The new medians, not the
New medians and roundabouts.
after the Gap project
Gap
one,
project.
not like. And they're doing the pretty, like the inside of the circles this summer. I
Yeah.
read that. That's pretty.
Beautiful design. but-
It looks really
Yeah.
good. It will be really pretty. How about, ground?
Oh, yeah.
That's right. Rainbow Court, they haven't built, they have an active building permit.
It is coming up slowly.
They have an active building. permit.
The north side of Main Street, you get a really good view of the grout. Just if you need a good shot.
They have an active building permit. But how about Centura? They do not have an active building. permit.
How much longer is there?
One more year.
January 24.
Any movement with,
I think it's March 24th. They got.
any movement?
Yeah.
Any movement on log cabin property? I know,
Development application on that one.
there is.
There is not.
Like made an agenda for a second.
They're open.
Yeah,
Potter.
I've never seen
They're
something
open.
before, and it was like never on.
I think they're still trying to make an application.
Anything on the parcel on 6th and Teller Alley? It's
Oh, that, Mr. Feldman's property
Yes.
where you used to live?
Yes.
No, there's no active application at all for that.
could be a great house for local, you know. It's habitable.
I actually spoke,
I
yeah, he
could've-
called me.
Mr. Card.
Larry called me a week ago and said, hey, I saw something.
Perfectly habitable cabin.
Let's say goodbye.
And
An Easter card.
So it's,
I get those, yeah.
An Easter card.
Yeah,
From Larry.
yeah,
From
even though,
Feldman.
yeah, because you convert it.
yeah, it's written in the paper. I mean, the labor building, the brick building was at 6 and Galena 7. So can you update what's being submitted on that?
Yeah, at the March 28th town council meeting, the council and the developer NHP Foundation, which is a national workforce affordable housing developer, came to agreement on term sheets and gave direction to staff to work on a purchase, sale and development agreement to jointly develop 101 West Main, which is the
The low building.
Chiefs Grader, it's got so many names, as well as the Colorado Workforce Housing Center or Workforce Center. Between those
High-tech
two properties, sorry.
Professional building. A tech product.
Oh, yeah, that's why. So,
Just
oh,
both of them.
and between the two, that could be 90,000, as well as eventually 3,000 square feet for daycare, 2,000 square feet for the workforce center and offices, and about 3,000 square feet of mental health offices over there.
I love too, if that comes through, you get riverfront affordable housing. That's really cool.
That would be good, right by bus
Yeah.
and a beautiful design.
that would be it.
Accusing yourself on this one, huh?
So, yeah, so there's movement. Also at the last meeting, there was an MOU executed between the town and the Granite Block LLC, which is Nathan Glassman, for the property at 207 Granite and 275 Granite, also known as the Sabatini lot, to work on a joint development.
All right.
There's a lot of things in progress for Susan to take over.
Okay, awesome.
When does that right around April 7th?
All right.
CDOT lot, is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
And the construction timeline is by November 1st, 2024.
Are you guys, is that the one where we're inviting the governor or whatever? Are they coming?
We had a call on that today. I think the governor's gonna try to make it. Certainly, Shoshana Liu, who's the director, is planning on making it, probably Rick Garcia from DOLA, because
When is
the
this?
speaker plus speaker here invited, Roberts, Jonah Goose, and all these people that have had some support for it.
When's this on the groundbreaking day?
Not second. Not in May.
Oh, I thought it was April. I thought it was April.
The actual groundbreaking one.
Okay. Okay.
The ceremonial with the golden shovels and everything, that'll be something.
Okay.
It's May 20th.
Oh, good, you pushed it later. It's definitely gonna
No.
snow May 20th.
It'll still snow.
Dang it.
It will snow. You know it will.
So I know the answer.
I know, I'm so happy.
Never sees like what we, but like those development applications, like what we saw today, that never goes before council.
Right.
But it's not like they don't know that, obviously. Huh? I guess it's just really hard to, I think when you see it as a planning commissioner and you can't do anything about it, and,
No,
and it's
I-
like that feeling, I feel like they don't have that feeling.
No, I think they definitely do have that feeling. More than one council member and the mayor have mentioned that concern and that feeling with the various projects that have been happening and how it's changing the character. And that's one of the reasons that at least a few council members are really interested in pursuing having that inclusionary discussion with you and getting
And
the
yeah,
ideas.
they asked for this conversation with you on the 23rd.
That's awesome. Cause I mean, like, they won't see Suzanne's, like, her comment, cause she'll make it before us, but we can't do anything about what she was saying really. So,
No, but I mean, they're out in the community. They talk to a lot of folks and certainly they do get this feedback.
Well, I think the word that we're talking about is frustration that we have here, that there's only so much we can do. So in today's paper, it talked about our governor. It's just pushing new legislation,
Oh, yeah.
which talks about. So I want to get this straight, that it's kind of a negative, that we cannot, that municipalities cannot restrict high density construction. Did I say that right?
kind of.
Well, that's the intent of the regulation, and the way it's drafted, it's a very large bill. If you've got some spare time, it's 106 pages long, that you could read.
And one asleep,
Read the whole
and one asleep.
Yeah,
I-
and
I
it's
read
got
the whole
various
thing.
tiers for
Really?
whether you're
Yeah.
a large urban municipality or a small urban municipality, or we're in a rural resort industrial or rural resort job centers or JCs. And then like small counties and small municipalities really don't have to win. But the way, what it does is it really sets up mandates and unfortunately, fortunately, we are already doing all of these things, but it's setting rules and regulations on us, kind of infringing on the whole rule of authority. And I think that's the concern that we saw from the other town managers. Through our comments on the bill so far, I think there's going to be some amendments and adjustments to that bill that will better reflect some of, and recognize and acknowledge some of the leadership that the mountain communities have done so far in affordable housing. Because right now that bill is written, I think it's really written for the Front Range and places that haven't done some of these things already.
Put zoning like
It doesn't actually, it doesn't require deed restriction. It says upzone it
Right.
and add more housing units, but nothing on deed restriction or affordability, which does nothing, as we see tonight, on, density in itself does not create affordability.
Right.
Well, so,
That
I mean,
part
in
of it's
theory-
directed
in
at
theory-
Lakewood.
Oh,
And-
absolutely.
and Lakewood, which
I think
restricted.
It was really directed, that this entire legislation was really focused and thinking about the Front Range when it was developed, and it didn't really accommodate our community very well.
yeah. But just to add to that, like the whole thinking is that we have a supply problem, right? That we just haven't been building enough housing since like the 80s or whatever. And so now, especially since the recession, there's just a supply. We just haven't constructed enough to meet the demand of all the people that are moving to Colorado. And so they're saying, we want things like ADUs to be uses by right. You can't restrict it in any way more than the single family home. They've created a category called middle housing, which is for duplexes and triplexes.
Up to 6 places.
Up to 6 plus, and that they would be also a use by right anywhere you allow a single family home. So they're just sort of trying to mandate this just more density, filling in single family residential neighborhoods. And they're trying to get at like where there's transit oriented development to reduce, like get rid of parking requirements, minimum density levels, not maximums, minimums. And so things like that. I don't know.
It just
There's
seems
some
hard to
parts of it
apply
that
it
have
to
merit,
everywhere.
but yeah, you can't just.
Blanket zoning, it seems like a lot.
But what Don said, like they're saying more housing is just gonna create affordability because you're creating these smaller type units that should cost less, but in the mountains they don't.
Yeah, and
And
supply and
so,
demand doesn't
and
apply here. so
no,
much.
and
We'll
so-
have this demand.
Yeah,
So
it just doesn't work.
again, I think there are some elements of the legislation that are good. I think there was some good intention behind it.
This
But
heavy handed.
You really can't apply something like this on a statewide basis because this state is so diverse.
Yeah.
And we're in the West, we're in Colorado. We really value our independence as a jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Our home rule authority, which, and this is overrule home rule authority, which I don't think there's a lot of municipalities that are very excited about. So.
Yeah.
I think right now the legislation is in the position where a whole bunch of people are going to be coming out against it. And if they do take some time to work through amendments, they could get to non-opposition for a lot of these.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what should happen over the course of the next
So
month.
if they get some workforce housing in there and some other things that would benefit. I mean, Denver's got the same workforce housing problem that we've got, so, it seems like that's the focus that they should have taken.
If there's if density is great, if it's deed restricted, but also if you have the infrastructure to support it. And at least, as an example, at least in this case, they're defining transit oriented development as within a quarter mile of a fixed rail transit system. Great. That's not here. So that doesn't apply here. So there's a number of things that in that bill that do not apply here, we wouldn't have to deal with. But this is still the concept that we're trying to apply really massive legislation statewide and
Yeah. I really think it's weird that they created like a tier 1, which is, the Front Range, tier 1 cities. They have tier 2 cities, and then they have the rural resort job centers. And most of the regulation applies to tier 1 and rural resort job centers. They whole like kind of skip that tier 2.
well, because that's like small town within the metro would be in tier 2. So Glendale.
I was like, what is there one?
Beaumont,
Yeah.
little tiny places, little tiny towns. So it's
Seems a
a
little
lot.
overreaching right now.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Again, the governor should be we should appreciate that he's trying to do something. He's recognizing the problem, he's trying to address a problem. I just don't know that this is the best vehicle for it.
Yeah.
Do we have a
About a week
motion?
reading it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Robert. I thought it was the most stellar exit performance.